You mentioned a moment ago you signed some young, hungry players at the start of the season. One of whom would have been Tyler Morton, of course,
Yeah.
arrived on loan from Liverpool. 41 appearances, 3 goals, 5 assists, which decent numbers for what I would describe as a relatively sort of steady Eddie, safe hand, defensive type midfielder. Is that how you've seen him? I noticed he played a lot as a DM, a little bit as a more sort of conventional eight, box to box type midfielder. How would you sort of assess his role really in the side?
Yeah, so we kind of play, especially under Rosini, the style of player was obviously to have our back four. We allowed the full backs to push on, and then our two sitting midfielders, which was usually Seri, who's an absolutely fantastic
Mm.
midfielder, technically to learn off of Morton, by the way. Like he will have learned so much from him this season. And then Morton obviously sitting alongside him. And I think that them two together perfectly complemented each other. I mean, like Morton's eye for a pass is, I mean, you only have to go back and see his assist for us on Tufan's goal against Cardiff at home was absolutely like the long diagonal from the edge of our box into the edge of their box for one touch and a dink. It was fantastic. But no, he's out. He's sort of that double pivot for us. He helps change defense into attack. He dropped deep alongside Seri and try and we played dangerously out the back like a lot of teams tend to do nowadays and take those risks. But the fact that Morton's so comfortable in possession and good with the ball in tight areas and being pressed and things like that helped us in that style. So, those two were absolutely crucial. And that's shown by the way he's played 40 odd games that they were crucial to our system and the way we wanted to build up in getting into the opposition's box. And like you say, I think the only criticism you'd have of Morton is he probably should have had more goals. That's the only bad thing I can think to say of him. I mean, he's clearly got an eye for goal. I think he had a week, I think, where he scored three. I think he got his first professional goal for us, and then I think that's right. And then he got the England under 21s debut and scored as well, and then scored again the following game after. And it was like, oh, he's found his shooting boots, but he only got the one after that, I think, and that was Norwich, and that was a bit of a screamer in a 2-1 loss. So, but no, I really like Morton. I think he's shown this season that when the going gets tough, he can still stick it out. He had a little bit of a dip in form following his absolutely ludicrous red card he got against Sheffield Wednesday away.
I see
That
it.
obviously
Yeah,
got
that's
rescinded
right.
because it was not a red card. But from that point, I feel like he started double guessing his tackles and things, and started rather than committing to them, he sort of would let players drift past him. But he's young and he's still going to learn, and those things do perhaps leave a little bit of a psychological note on you when you're playing a game when you're a young player. So, but no, he's been absolutely fantastic for us. What a player.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the goals element because I was going to bring up a quote from Liam Senior, your now former manager. He described him as not necessarily a ball-winning midfielder, but he intercepts so many things and reads the game very well. And he suggested in that comment and in the following quote that there was more to come from him in the final third, which is kind of what you alluded to as well. You obviously just sang his praises there. I think overall, sort of on him, very impressed with his loan spell. The Championship can be tough, and it can be really sort of relentless in terms of the intensity, games thick and fast constantly. And by and large, it feels like he's done a good job. And I wanted to pick up on his discipline. I remember the red card that you were talking about. I actually watched that game, and also the fact that I think he only picked up like a handful of yellow cards across the season, which in the role he plays across 40 odd appearances are quite impressive as well.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is he's not to me he's not a conventional defensive midfielder, and you wouldn't want him to be your sole number six because he isn't that sort of destroyer. He's not going to
Mm.
protect the back four in terms of going in and lunging into tackles and things and being physical. He is like you've just said there with Rosini's quote. He's more. He wants to eliminate space. He reads the game. He knows where those passes are going to try and be, and that's where he wants to be and block shots. So he's not necessarily a tackler, but he has got an eye for sort of that defensive capability in the sense of, like you say, he wants to strangle space and try and win the ball back in different ways. But maybe so we say about adding goals to his game. Maybe that's another part he can add too if he wants to be a complete midfielder. You know, maybe and that bit more of tenacious personality about himself and not be scared to go into these tackles. And like you say, just maybe when he started to do that, he got that red card and then he started double guessing himself again and stopping, and maybe it sort of retracted that bit of progression he had. But no, he's yeah. To be fair, we were quite harshly dealt some yellow cards this season, so he's done quite well to keep them quite low. I mean, I know his partner alongside him, Seri, used to get pretty much a yellow every game, but that's because he's aging on now, and when players got around him, it was a tactical yellow, he'd bring him down. But no, he's Morton has been absolutely brilliant, to be fair, and like you say, you've seen because he did come to us with a little bit of negative rap from Blackburn
Yeah.
fans, and I didn't quite understand it because he played I think, every single game from last season. So in 2 seasons, he's played now 80 odd games, I think, at championship level for us in Blackburn. So he's not a player that gets injured very often. He's not getting suspensions and missing games through that way. So he's a consistent performer as well. Like I say, maybe had a little bit of dip in form after the Sheffield Wednesday game, but towards the end of the season, he picked back up again. And I think that's what you want to see from a young player when they do have those sort of maybe dips in confidence and in performance levels, that they have got that sort of mental capacity to bring themselves back into it and pick themselves back up and keep going. And he's certainly a player that does that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you just mentioned it there, obviously, two pretty successful loan spells now at Blackburn. I think I spoke to a Blackburn fan at the back end of his spell there last season. And whilst he was very impressed with what he's done, he did sort of allude to the fact that the fans weren't like waxing lyrical about him. It was more the manager. I think it was John Dahl Thomason at the time, really took a keen eye on him and really liked him and played him all the time. But the fans weren't quite as enamoured, I think it's fair to say. Just on Tyler Morton then to wrap up, I mean, two championship loan spells, both pretty decent, 80 odd appearances. Chances are he gets a good look in at pre-season, I'd say. Obviously, new manager at Liverpool. Like, it's a hard question to answer. I appreciate this, but what do you think is next for him? Do you think he's ready for the step to the Premier League, if not even Liverpool?
I think he's got the capacity. I don't think he's at Premier League level yet. I think he needs to, like we said, there's still areas of his game he needs to work on. I think if he was obviously to play in a high tempo kind of style of play, Liverpool play. I mean, obviously you've got a new manager coming in. We don't know what style he's going to do in terms of what. Obviously, Klopp demands pure intensity for 90 minutes, and that's what he does. But Morton definitely, I think, needs at least another season before he's trialed properly in the Prem, because I think in the Championship, in terms of the Championship's more physical. So if he can sort of obviously bulk up to the point where. And saying maybe be a bit more tenacious and a bit more industrious in the middle, and like I say, start producing a bit more in the final third. Those are the two aspects really, because he's got everything else. Like, he's tidy in possession, his passing range is brilliant. He doesn't lack confidence at all. It's just like you say, it's just maybe those little aspects of a game that you need to be a midfielder to help run the game. But like you say, he's learned off some fantastic players here. We've got Seri, you've got Ozan Tufan, you've got Cavalli, who came in as well, who we knew that you can form these kind of partnerships. And Rosinia seems like he's a very good man-to-man manager. So I think, like, throughout the season, he will have learned a lot from him too. And it's just one of those, I think, where I mean, we'd quite happily have him here permanently. I'm not going to lie. I think if Klopp was still manager, I think we might have been able to lure him out, because it's similar to Delap, really, like with who we've had on loan from Man City, that they're both now at the ages where they need to either be breaking into the first team or looking at leaving, because loan move after loan move is okay, but realistically, you need to be settled in one environment and playing week in, week out in the same place, in the same system, with the same manager. And I know, obviously, we're going to have a different manager too, so I won't say that contradicts that one. But no, but for me, like, I think if we could structure a deal with Morton similar to what we did with Philogene and Villa, where we maybe buy him for a cheaper sum than what he's worth, but Liverpool have got that option to buy back. So it's essentially like a glorified loan, 2 or 3 years for him to develop us in the permanent surroundings. And if he becomes the player that Liverpool think he can do, you've got the option to buy him back. So yeah, I mean, by all means, I think the pre-season will be big for him if he can try and get himself to force his way into that side. Obviously, there'll probably be a lot of changes with Klopp leaving. You can imagine, places are going to be up for grabs. Players are going to come and go as well. So maybe he can just sort of take advantage of the chaos and try and obviously prove his point there. And maybe then, obviously, training in different surroundings with better players and things like that, and a new manager might take him to those heights that we think he might not be able to get to just yet. But yeah, big summer for him.